This is Calm AF, a podcast for humans who are hard on themselves. A podcast for the overthinkers, people pleasers, perfectionists, and overachievers. I'm Kristen Finch, and I'm going to teach you how to quiet that incessant negative chatter in your head. Because you know what a person with a calm mind can do? Anything they want. Grab your coffee, gorgeous soul, because today's the day you get Calm AF. Hello, gorgeous souls. Welcome to Calm AF. So we are in part 3 of the nervous system series. Today we're going to be talking about hypovigilance. So before we do that, let's do a quick recap in case you haven't listened to the first 2 episodes. So in part 1 of this series, I shared that in my work with clients over the last 10 plus years, when people feel stuck, it's typically stemming from dysregulation in their nervous system. And I see 3 pretty typical patterns of this dysregulation. So there's hypervigilance, there's hypovigilance or negligence or shutdown, and then there's vacillators where they're going back and forth between the 2. So I shared those 3 types in the first part of the series, and I also shared in that part 1 the Calm AF scale, which is maybe one of the most important tools that I teach my clients to help them recognize their own dysregulation, to help them predict and prepare for when they're likely to move out of regulation into a dysregulated state. And when they know that, they can also know how to get out of it faster. We can't avoid dysregulation. Our nervous system is autonomic, so we can't forget about that fact about nervous systems. We don't always get to control when we're triggered, but when we have the awareness, we are able to move out of it quicker and back into Calm AF. So I think it's one of the most powerful tools in the Calm AF toolbox, because why do we usually fall back into old patterns? Because we think we have no control over our shit, but we do. And once you spend time really getting to know what your patterns are, then you can create an individualized plan for yourself. Okay, so that's what I shared in the first one. If you haven't taken the dysregulation quiz yet, go do that. I will put the link to take that quiz in the show notes. It will help you understand which of the 3 types you spend the most amount of time in. So that was part 1. In part 2, we talked about the hypervigilant state, what it looks like and feels like. And I also shared 7 really common ways hypervigilance shows up for most people. Next week, in part 4, we're going to be talking about vacillators, which means that back and forth. You're constantly racing back and forth between hyper and hypovigilance. You're either going a million miles an hour or you are stuck going 0. But today, part 3, we're going to dive into the hypovigilant pattern. So if hypervigilance is urgent and frenetic, hypovigilance is shut down and stuck. I'm going to say this a million times in this series, but it's very, very important to remember. If you want to break free from these patterns, it's knowing that these 2 states are not opposites of each other. They are 2 sides of the same coin, that coin being dysregulation, right? So the opposite of hypervigilance is not hypovigilance, it's Calm AF. The opposite of hypovigilance isn't hypervigilance, it's Calm AF. So let's talk about hypovigilance. When someone shows up in my world and their dominant pattern is hypovigilance, there's usually 2 main things that I've noticed after working with like hundreds of clients. Hypovigilance is either this learned pattern from childhood, or it's a result of complete energetic, physical, emotional exhaustion. So either this person learned way back in childhood, or maybe in some toxic relationship that they've had in their life, that the best way to stay safe from physical, emotional, or psychological harm is to be invisible. Right? A lot of people that are stuck in hypovigilance learn to stop trying because no matter what they did, it was going to be criticized, they were going to be punished, or they were just going to be told again, it's not good enough. So to them, hypervigilance, right? That urgent, frenetic energy, trying to be perfect, trying to people please another person, created more problems than simply shutting down. So their dominant pattern became shutting down or hypovigilance. That's how it would look like as a learned pattern from childhood. The other reason I see is from complete and total exhaustion, and that is due to all the time, all the years spent in that hypervigilant state. So like I said, next week we're going to talk about the vacillator type, and that is a very common pattern, this kind of dizzying back and forth between hypervigilance and hypovigilance. But getting stuck in hypovigilance is because you have burnt out so hard from hypervigilance that you're just like, I'm just going to stay here. I'm going to stay in hypovigilance because I'm burnt out. I've crashed my system. It's like your car ran out of gas a long time ago, but you then learned how to start the car and just run on fumes for a long time, but now you don't even have fumes left, right? Like there's no gas, there's no fumes, there is no movement. That is hypovigilant. So that energy of the hypovigilant side of the Calm AF scale is shut down. It's low, it's heavy, it's stagnant. I describe it, I said hypervigilant is very squirrel energy. Hypovigilant is Eeyore. It's very Eeyore. Everything bad is happening. What's the point, right? If you're on this side of the scale, you might feel hopeless or stuck or frozen. You're definitely tired. And the thoughts on this side, on the hypovigilant side, are things like, why bother? Nothing works, so why bother? It's not going to work out, so why would I even bother trying? What's the point? I suck. Everything always goes wrong. Bad things always happen. No matter what I try, bad things always happen, or nothing ever works out for me, so I don't even try anymore. It was interesting. In my coaching program, Calm AF Life, we spent about a month going through the Calm AF scale, and we talked about all 3 different types of dysregulation. And I would say by far the most enlightening conversations happened when we were talking about hypovigilance. And it surprised me, honestly, but here's why I think it happened. So we are groomed, like we as humans are programmed to believe that hypervigilance is actually desirable, right? Like we think that hypervigilance is like the status symbol of like, oh, it's busy, right? The whole busyness equals worthiness narrative has us believing that this urgent state, this frenetic, like busy state of being is productive. Like we think we're so productive in hypervigilance. So we're really in tune. Most people are very in tune with their hypervigilant state because we spend most of our life trying to figure out how to stay hypervigilant because we think that's the way we're supposed to be in order to get anything done. Like we are actually trying to stay in the dysregulated state. How do I stay busy? How do I stay productive? How do I get more productive? How can I be productive every minute? And we've spent most of our life trying to figure out how to stay out of hypovigilance, how to get out of ruts, how to get unstuck. So in these calls over the past month, when we actually stopped and like, let's just look at what it's like to be in this hypovigilant state. How does this pattern show up for you? There were so many aha moments. Myself included, I was having so many aha moments when we were talking about hypovigilance and how it shows up, right? So many people being like, oh my gosh, I thought I was hypervigilant like all the time, but actually I am in a hypovigilant state a lot of the time, like around 8 o'clock every day or every Sunday night. Here's why that matters. Because the only way you're ever going to stop a pattern is if you have awareness of that pattern. This is why we spent time going into this. It's more important to learn how to be Calm AF, but we need to have awareness so that when it does show up, we have the awareness and we can move out of it, like I said at the beginning of the episode. So let's talk about some pretty common ways that hypovigilance tends to show up so you can recognize it in yourself. So here are some ways. You're tired. You're exhausted, even though you haven't done anything. Okay, let's go ahead and dispel the myth that hypovigilance is resting, right? Or that you're being lazy. You are using so much energy. Think about all the energy you are expending in beating yourself up. Think about all the energy you are expending by avoiding your thoughts. It takes a lot of work to shove thoughts down very deep into your core, right? It takes a lot of effort to push away your feelings, to fight with your thoughts. You might be in a stagnant energy state, but that energy is heavy. Hypovigilance feels like every move you make, you have this 50-pound weight in your backpack. You are not tired for no reason. Hypovigilance is just as exhausting as hypervigilance, if not more. Okay, so that's one way you can recognize it. The second way, you low-key want to stay stuck because you think the only way to get out of this state, this hypovigilant state, is to go back into hypervigilance, and you're tired, right? The thought of having to go back to urgency and busyness and frenetic perfectionism, overwhelming energy managing, like you're like, no, I'm just going to stay here. I'm just going to stay stuck just a little bit longer. I just need to get some more energy built up. You don't have the energy to go back to hypervigilance. This is important for you to hear. And this is why I will shout from the rooftops now until forever. You need to learn how to be calm AF. You need to train yourself to be regulated because you are way more productive in calm AF regulated energy than you are in hypervigilant energy. People who actually finally are like, fine, I'm just going to try it. I'm going to trust you, Kristen. They are shocked to discover, gosh, when I'm regulated, I actually get more done than when I'm hypervigilant, right? And that leads to the third way hypovigilant patterns show up is you think that shutting down and numbing out in this hypovigilant state is the only way you will ever get any rest, right? You believe that the only way that you're going to get shit done is if you are aggressively moving, pushing yourself, going 1,000 miles an hour. Then the only option to get some rest is to completely shut it down. But do you actually, when you are numbed out on your phone all night, do you feel rested? Do you feel refreshed and invigorated after you use food or alcohol to shut off your brain? No, friend. You aren't getting a break from the stress by shutting down or numbing out. You are adding to it just for later. Or, like I said, it's like 50 pounds. You're actually doing this work trying to shove it away. You're perpetuating the pattern by using this numbing out period as your rest. It's not rest. True rest happens in a calm AF state, just like true productivity happens in calm AF energy. Okay, fourth, you don't trust yourself. You don't believe you're capable of trying and succeeding. You don't believe you're capable of handling people being mad at you or disappointed or negatively impacted in any way because of you. You don't trust your decisions, your thoughts, your resilience, or your strength. You trust the familiarity of staying stuck. Another way you can recognize hypovigilance. The fifth way, you spend a lot of time trying to get motivated, praying for some inspiration, right? You're like waiting to feel your way into getting moving. And let me translate what this actually means. The motivation you're waiting for is your hypervigilant voice. That awful inner critic voice, you're waiting for it to get so loud. Oh my God, you're so lazy. What are you doing? You're so lazy. Get up, get going. What's wrong with you? You're waiting for that voice to get so loud that you finally get up. You can't take it anymore. And that's the only thing that you think is going to get you out of hypovigilance. You're not waiting to feel motivated. You are waiting for the shame to be so unbearable that you are hurled back into hypervigilance. In the sixth way, you feel like you've lost your sparkle. You feel like an empty shell. So hypovigilant thinking may have tricked you into thinking that this shutdown state is a better use of your energy. Like it's better to not care at all than to be on high alert. Like you're protecting yourself from disappointment or conflict or criticism. But apathy isn't calm. apathy isn't the absence of chaos. It's really the procrastination of chaos. I want you to think about that. Calm AF is the absence of chaos. When we are apathetic, we aren't dealing with anything. We're putting it off for later. Okay, so the reason why you think that you need to just not care, that's the only other option, is because you haven't learned to be calm AF yet. Okay? All right. I feel like we've hit on the big and most common ways this shows up. So let me quickly talk about why you want to stop the hypovigilant pattern. Because you're probably going to say like, yeah, right now I feel like I want to do this, but not yet. Like, give me a few more days to rest before I swing back over to hypervigilance, or this is the only way for me to stay safe. For my safety, I need to keep this pattern, which means you need a really strong why. Why is it safe for you to stop numbing out? Why is it safe for you to move out of this hypovigilant state? Well, a couple of reasons. First, it's a waste of time. Your hypovigilance isn't keeping you safe from feeling bad. You are feeling bad in hypovigilance. There's a lot of shame in hypovigilance. So, number two, this isn't rest. Numbing out isn't resting. You are not actually resting yourself here. Okay, that's a good reason why. If you want to actually feel rested, if you want to gain actual energy back, you've got to get into that calm AF state. Another good reason why, because your life simply isn't waiting for you to get up. It is not stopping while you numb out. It is happening and you're missing it. And a good reason why, because no one's coming to save you. There's no one who can get you out of this but you. You aren't avoiding future pain by staying stuck in a holding pattern. You are perpetuating the suffering. Okay? Now, that said, I can absolutely teach you, right? I can give you the tools so that you can do it yourself, right? So that you know what you need to know in order to disrupt your own dysregulated patterns. So make sure you take the quiz. It's in the show notes, and it'll tell you which type you spend the most time in, whether it's hyper, hypo, or vacillators. But also, after you take the quiz, I'm going to share with you more on how to break these patterns. And the absolute best way to break them for real, for good, or for life is to join Calm AF Life. I am teaching you in this program how to get and stay in this Calm AF energy. This is not something that just happens. People are like, oh, once I stop this, nope. You actually have to learn how to be in Calm AF energy and how to stay there. And I teach it every single day in the program. It's the best investment in your future you might ever make, for real. All right, next week, we're going to move into that third dysregulation type, vacillators. You aren't going to want to miss this episode. Make sure you are subscribed. I have a feeling this is going to be one of those episodes where I'm getting a lot of emails from people being like, oh my God, are you in my head? Are there hidden cameras in my house? Yes, I am in your head. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're doing. All right, don't miss that episode. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. I love you so much, and I will see you next time. Thanks for listening. And before you go, one more thing. So as you know, I am slightly obsessed with helping as many humans tap into their calm AFness as possible. So if this podcast has helped you, would you please leave a review, make sure you're subscribed, and share it with your friends. Also, make sure you head on over to KristenFinch.com to see how you can work with me. You can sign up for my emails and get any other goodies I have available. Until next week, I love you so much. I am so grateful that you're here. I'll see you next time.